The police are meant to protect us from the worst of society. We trust them to uphold the law and keep us safe. But what happens when the protector becomes the predator?
He's performing as the protector of the public. On the other hand, he's actually a really dark monster.
Is that how you obtain this material?
And the people who are meant to keep us safe become dangerous.
I'm arrested on suspicion of attempted murder.
Even though you're a police officer, people will feel that they're above the law.
But how would you catch a criminal who thinks like a cop?
He's got a head start on the investigation team.
He's panicking at this point, and he's now running.
I've enlisted the help of 3 experts. 2 senior officers that have put hundreds of offenders behind bars.
Most people, they know when their back's against the wall and they're going to get convicted for something.
The horror, he's one of us.
And a leading psychologist who can analyse the criminal mind.
Underlying that anger is the need to dominate, is the need to control.
In this series, I'll discover cops who put themselves on the wrong side of the law,
He's like a Jekyll and Hyde character.
abuse their power, and commit horrific crimes.
We should never have had that badge, ever.
Cops deal with stressful and high-pressured incidents day in, day out. But what happens when a highly trained officer flips and not only commits a terrible crime, but goes on the run?
999, what's your emergency?
A 999 call comes in. It's anonymous, and the caller states they're concerned for the welfare of the woman in a central Manchester hotel.
Which room is she in, caller?
The first responders arrive at the scene, and immediately they're confronted with a room in disarray, of furniture being moved around, and they find Ellie Moxham unconscious, fighting for her life.
Ellie is a 24-year-old PhD student at Lancaster University. As paramedics start administering treatment, it's clear she's suffered life-threatening injuries.
They start to help her, but as they're helping her, a warrant card is also seen to be left in the room, and it's in the name of a serving officer, James Riley, from Lancashire Police.
Where was James Riley, and what exactly happened in that room? I mean, Ellie's fighting for her life, and the only person who knows what happened is Riley. Is James Riley responsible for the attack, or could he also be a victim? To help me unravel this case, I'm on my way to meet up with former Detective Chief Superintendent Fiona Mallon.
When you turn up at that scene and you find the warrant card there, and you find a female fighting for her life, as a detective, you're open-minded. You're thinking all of the lines of inquiry are possible. Where is that officer? Where is Riley? Are they safe? Have they gone off? What is Riley's role in this? Are they a suspect? We have to find Riley as soon as possible. That's the priority right now. Save Ellie's life and find Riley.
So, James Riley's warrant card was in the room still?
Yes.
So this sounds like he's just gone.
Yes. This is moving at a very fast pace. The police need to find Riley, and they need to talk to him to find out what's happened. So a lot is going on at this point. Ellie's being conveyed to hospital, getting emergency surgery and help. The police worked out quickly that it was Riley. He'd called paramedics.
But it puts him at the scene.
Yes. At the same time, police receive a phone call from James Riley's mother, who tells them that James has rung them and said he's killed Ellie and he's going to kill himself.
So Riley's not only confessed to his mum that he's behind the attack, leaving Ellie for dead in a hotel room, now he's threatening to kill himself. What's going on in this guy's mind? This doesn't sound like it was something planned.
No, it sounds very spontaneous. At this point, the police now know James Riley is a suspect and they have to find him as soon as possible.
For any investigator, you'd want to establish where is James Riley.
Former Detective Chief Inspector Howard Groves has decades of experience finding people that want to disappear.
Where is he gone to? Is he fleeing the scene to commit suicide? Is he fleeing the scene to go and meet his parents, whatever that may be? So initially, the investigators will be trying to work out exactly where he was. That's got to be your first port of call. The advantage for the inquiry team was that they would have had CCTV footage that they would be able to call upon to try and establish his early movements.
But this time, the person on the run is a cop, desperate to avoid the consequences of his actions. And straight away, Riley is using his police know-how to try and turn the odds in his favor.
Right, so this footage shows Riley leaving via the fire escape.
This is at the hotel?
Yes, he's at the hotel.
Why is he coming down the fire exit?
Well, he's obviously thinking there's no cameras, so he might as well take this route than going back through the reception.
So he's already thinking.
So he's thinking ahead. Quite rightly, he's thinking ahead. We can now see that he's on his phone.
Later in the investigation, police managed to trace the anonymous call to the emergency services. So who's he calling there then?
I would suggest at that point is the ambulance service. It's 11:28, which is roughly the time that he did call the ambulance.
Thing is, though, they said it was an anonymous call, but if he's calling from his mobile, wouldn't they be able to trace that?
They would be able to trace it, but at this moment in time, he didn't give them his details, so they would show it as an anonymous caller.
Right.
So he's on his phone.
Yeah,
He's not looking up for any cameras. He assumes that there's no cameras there. You can see he's wearing what appears to be a green jacket.
Right.
And he's on his phone at that point. He stops.
So he's going down the fire escape?
Yes, he's going down the fire escape.
Just think what he's just done there. He's just literally... He thinks he just left her dead.
He's panicking at this point. And you can see he's out the door and he's still on his phone and he's now running.
So what do we know where Riley is now?
We know he discarded his phone and therefore the police would not be in a position to track some of his movements. But even by the sheer chance when the police find that phone, that's still good evidence that he's trying to keep away from them.
Riley's ditched his phone and he's on the run, trying to stay one step ahead. So what's his next move? To find out, I'm on my way to Manchester to meet Rachel Smith, a local journalist who covered this story. But we saw Riley running down the stairwell. Where does he go from there?
He jumps in his car, which is parked in this car park, and he's getting out of there. He's going as fast as he can. We can see here on the footage, he comes flying down the car park. He's really got his foot down.
Yeah, you can see he's flying, isn't he? Whoa, see that? He nearly hit that wall there.
Yeah.
He's going right on the other side of the road.
Yeah. He's got no concern for safety.
If anyone's coming up that other way, he's hitting them there, isn't he?
Yeah.
And if you look at the time, it's what, 20 minutes earlier, that's when he would have attacked Ellie.
That's right, yeah.
So it's only 20 minutes gone by, so he's fresh in his mind.
He's just trying to get out of there as quick as possible, isn't he? He's trying to distance himself.
This is the exit of the car park.
Yeah. So he comes flying out of it.
Oh, that's here.
Yeah.
I can see the car there, yeah.
That's right. And when he comes down here, he doesn't get very far. He gets just a short way down there, and then he crashes his car into this barrier here.
He just crashes here?
Yeah.
What happens then? Is he just off on foot, just running?
Yeah, I mean, he can't hang around, can he?
PC James Riley was now on foot. As far as he knows, he's a murderer, and he's using all his law enforcement expertise to evade capture. So whilst Riley's on the run now, how's Ellie? What's happened to her?
Ellie's in a life-threatening situation now. It looks like she's been strangled, and her brain has struggled because of the lack of oxygen. She's put into an induced coma, and we wait to see if she's going to make it.
It's midnight on Thursday, the 10th of November 2022, and in central Manchester, a desperate manhunt is underway. PC James Riley is on the run after a brutal attack on his ex-girlfriend, starting a cat-and-mouse chase with his police colleagues across the northwest of England.
So he was thinking ahead as to how he was going to be one step ahead of his colleagues. You dispose of your phone because those things will be able to track where you are. And if you're a police officer, you will know those things even more than the average person on the street.
In this situation, when you've got a lady fighting for her life, You've got a suspect on the loose. What's it like being the head of that manhunt?
A manhunt is a fast operation, and most senior officers will have come across those sort of circumstances. You have to prioritize how you're going to deal with that investigation, and a lot will be dependent on what evidence you may have already at your disposal. So if you've got CCTV evidence, you can use that to identify where someone's heading to, or shows you a bit of the actual crime itself. Those things are useful. But you're always having to think, we need to get to this person before they dispose of evidence, before they go underground and you can't find them for weeks and months, because then that will hinder the investigation going forward. So a manhunt is a significant part of policing that has to be dealt with in an effective manner.
When Riley called his mum to confess at around 11:15 that evening, he also threatened he was going to kill himself.
The investigation team would be reviewing Riley in both ways. A, because he's left his warrant card behind. Is that a sign now that he's leaving his identity as a police officer behind, and now he's going to treat himself as a member of the public, and he's going to cause harm to himself or somebody else? Or is it a ruse to try and start his escape plan? He's now got to do everything he can to stop the investigation following him, so they're looking at it as a suspect, but also as someone to wrap around, safeguard, and stop any more risk.
In a fast-moving manhunt, piecing together CCTV can provide valuable information to the investigators.
In this footage now, you can see clearly that's Riley, but if you notice, there's one thing that's missing. He's not wearing his coat at this point. So he's discarded his coat in the vehicle or somewhere nearby.
What? Has he done that on purpose, you think?
I'd think he was set on getting away from it.
He looks a bit calmer now, though. He's not running anymore. Is that to not draw attention to himself?
Well, if he starts running and there's nobody running behind him or in front of him, he's going to be drawing attention. So you can see Riley now approaching what we now know is an ATM machine. We know at this point he draws £250 in cash.
Why does he need cash?
Well, he doesn't want anybody to be able to find where he's been by using his credit card. That's going to leave an audit trail. If you have cash, you just pay by that means.
So he's thinking of maybe going on the run with cash?
Exactly. Here he is. You can clearly see that's him again.
He's looking over his shoulder a bit, though, isn't he? So he's probably thinking...
He's probably contemplating what he's going to do next.
A short while earlier, in a phone call to his mother, Riley had threatened to take his own life. But judging by his actions, there's more evidence of him trying to escape than following through on that threat. The fact that Riley says he's going to kill himself, what do you make of that?
I think it's self-indulgent. It's feeling sorry for himself now. There was no evidence to suggest he was going to go through with it. So there's never found any material or written stuff or anything that he was actually going to kill himself. It just feels like it was to mum and dad, a plea for help, I don't know, childlike maybe. But for me, it's very cowardly. I'm going to end it now. And he wants the attention back on himself, away from what he's done on himself. And why would he keep running and running?
Yeah. Riley is in panic mode, but he's savvy. He knows exactly how to throw the police off his trail, because he's one of them. It's around an hour after the attack on Ellie Moxham, and James Riley is steadily making his way out of the city centre, heading north.
He's getting away as quick as possible. The best thing to do is go on a bus. No one's going to be stopping the bus, per se, unless they had the footage to say he's gone on a bus. At that point, the police officers wouldn't have that information to them.
Even though he's panicking, he's still using his police knowledge a little bit.
And it's only a matter of 3 or 4 minutes before he gets off of the bus.
Riley disappears off the grid before reappearing at a service station 30 miles away. He knows motorways are the fastest way to put distance between himself and his police colleagues. 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's almost 2.5 hours since he made the phone call. So he's some distance away.
He's covered quite a lot of distance, and we only saw him get on a bus. How's he got that far, then?
He would have used a taxi. So he was just trying to change up the routes that he was taking, because he would have known that his colleagues would be looking at all of those opportunities to work out how he got from A to B.
And at this point, he thinks Ellie's dead.
Yeah, and he's probably contemplating that. She's dead. What is he going to do next?
But as police raced to apprehend Riley, they discovered that he wasn't trying to flee the country. Instead, He was trying to get back to the place he knows best, his family home in Bradford.
So we know that once Riley gets to Mum and Dad's house, Mum and Dad do everything they can to sort of keep him there. So Dad secures the house, locks the doors. Mum has obviously phoned the police. However, Riley is determined to get away.
What Riley didn't realise was that his fellow officers were prepared.
The officers knew that he rang his parents. So the first question they'd have asked the parents was, where do you live? And they'd have confirmed that by voters registry and all the other things that they can do. And when he applied for the police service, I'm sure he gave his parents' address. So they would just want to confirm that, and then they'd be looking to get hold of local officers to say, we think Riley may be heading to his parents. They would have officers in plain clothes close to where his parents live. What they didn't want is a marked police vehicle, because if he turns up and he sees that, he's going to be legging it in the opposite direction. So they'd want a discreet observation position, so that if he turns up, they'd wait for him to get into the address.
The net's closing in on Riley, but true to form, rather than come quietly, he makes one last dash for freedom. At what point do they actually arrest Riley?
When Riley gets to the address and his father locks the door so he couldn't leave, he went into the bathroom and then locked the door from the inside so that no one could get in. He more than likely was aware that police were nearby. I would have thought that there would have been blue lights flashing outside the home at that time of the morning, and he decided that he would exit the house through the bathroom window. But within minutes of him getting out through the bathroom window, he was apprehended.
So this just sounds chaotic. After a massive manhunt involving 3 police forces over 2 counties lasting several hours, PC James Riley was finally caught. In the early hours of November 11th, 2022, he was arrested on the street after climbing out of his parents' bathroom window. With Riley now in custody, investigators can start building their case against him. All this footage that they've got, they've just got so much evidence, haven't they, the police?
Yeah, the officers will be reasonably satisfied. So what they have to do is build up a timeline from the moment he leaves the hotel, based on the phone calls he made. Exactly when he leaves, you can see the emergency services vehicle turning up, so that's another good timeline.
And they know whereabouts he is in the country as well.
They know where he is. When he gets on the bus has got CCTV, that's showing a timeline. To get the sequence of events correct, there's always a possibility that the timing on the CCTV footage could be out by minutes, even more than that. So the officers would then make sure that they had another officer who would go out and map that route exactly that Riley took. So they were confident that the timelines fit the scenario that they're going to show to the jury.
When would the police actually try to access all this kind of information?
They would be seeking to access this information straight away.
Really?
Yes, because the hotel has the mechanisms for them to go and ask them to download that information for them. But that would be majority of this activity. They would then pick it up maybe 24 hours later, because they'd look at the different opportunities to gather CCTV, and then they would try and do a compilation showing exactly what happened. So there would have been officers that would have turned up at the hotel who would have been looking at CCTV footage.
With the investigation underway, I want to learn who James Riley is and what his connection is to Ellie Moxham. And what could you tell me about James Riley?
So James Riley was 27 years old. He was a member of Lancashire Police Force. He'd met Ellie Moxham at the University of Lancaster. They studied together, and then their relationship had continued through, and then they bought a house together in 2021. She was doing a PhD at Lancaster University, world at her feet, loads of opportunities, and they were together as a partnership. However, what is really apparent is their relationship after buying the house, possibly before, is breaking down very quickly. But Ellie's making it quite clear that she's not interested in Riley anymore. What happens, though, leading to that night, they'd already booked an event to go out together before breaking up.
Right. It was a final farewell to which Ellie would wish she'd never shown up. In an investigation, you'd want to speak to any witnesses, and in this case, there was no better witness than Ellie. When it comes to Ellie, what's her injuries like? Is she going to survive?
She's taken to hospital. She's put in an induced coma, so she's not in a position at that stage to provide the police with this set of circumstances that resulted in her injury. She was unable to explain a lot of what happened simply because of the injuries that she received. She was unable to give any significant evidence or information as to the circumstances surrounding the attack.
With Ellie unable to say what happened on the night of the 10th of November 2022, the question now was, why did it happen? On the surface, Riley and Ellie were doing well. They got together at uni, they had good jobs, they bought a house together. What happened for Riley to leave Ellie for dead on a hotel room floor? Doesn't make sense. Local journalist Rachel Smith gives more insight as to why Riley may have flipped. How do we end up here at this hotel?
Well, we know that they'd got tickets to go to a concert at the Manchester Apollo, although the relationship had turned sour by that point and it was looking like it was over. They'd obviously not wanted to waste the tickets, so they'd come along to enjoy the evening. And after the concert, they come back to this hotel? That's right, yeah. They come back to the hotel room and they both go into the room together, but unfortunately, Riley's the only one that leaves that hotel room safe. Well, what happened then in the room? At some point over the evening, Riley realises that Ellie's been speaking to another guy. She's been texting him and, things are getting off the ground. Now, he's obviously very, very jealous about this. And they go back to the room. Sometime, from what we know, sometime around 11 o'clock, he just lost his temper and he attacked her really badly.
How does a police officer lose control so badly that he leaves the woman he's supposed to love for dead? And for that matter, how did he ever become a cop in the first place? By November 12, 2022, PC James Riley was behind bars for viciously assaulting his ex-girlfriend and leaving her for dead in a Manchester hotel room. But how does anyone, let alone a cop, just snap? To discover more about Riley's relationship with Ellie Moxham, I'm speaking with psychologist Serena Simmons.
Ellie was a young woman in her 20s. She was living a very, very full life. She had gone to university, and that is actually where she'd met Riley. And I think from what we know, although she was trying to live life to the full and she went on to do a PhD, so a very, very intelligent young woman, she actually really struggled in her relationship with Riley.
What could you tell me about Riley?
Riley was a more complicated character. So he was a police officer, so we know that that lends itself to him being able to be professional and hold down a job. He was also educated and had gone to university. But we know that in his relationship with Ellie, he was actually very, very possessive, very, very jealous character. And I think that shows more of his true personality coming through. So there was a lot of jealousy and protectiveness and possessiveness, really, directed towards Ellie.
Had that been from the start, or did that end up getting worse as time went on?
We get a sense when we look at their relationship from the outside. They're a young couple. They met at university. They clearly had a lot in common. They probably enjoyed each other's company to start with, and there would have been so many reasons that she wanted to really nurture this relationship with him. But obviously, over time, his true personality started to come out, and I think she found that just increasingly challenging as time went on.
How did Ellie actually see Riley as a person and how he treated her?
Ellie actually describes herself as feeling like she's often walking on eggshells when she's with Riley. So there's a sense that she can't really be herself in that relationship because he is so jealous, he is so possessive.
Why do people behave like that in relationships? Why do people become possessive and controlling?
You get the sense that Ellie became his whole world, that he put a lot of focus on her, that the emphasis of his life kind of was directed towards her, that he kind of made her his everything. And I think that's why you see that element of possessiveness. I think he definitely felt like he had some kind of ownership over her.
Well, wouldn't that just drive Ellie away rather than make her want to be with him more? It should it do the opposite, wouldn't it?
There are definite signs of them drifting apart at this point. So we know that Ellie had started to see somebody else, and yet they had this pre-planned event. So prior to them breaking up, they had actually organised to go to a concert together. And they agreed to still go to that to honour the fact that they had booked it prior. And I think this is Ellie trying to show Riley that she can and still wants to be friends with him in some way. They've known each other a really, really long time. So if you think about their relationship, they've been together since university. And arguably for Ellie, there's some friendship that's the basis of that relationship, and she wants to maintain that. And I think this is her saying, look, we can still be friends. These are the kind of things that we can do together if we stay friends. I'm really, really willing to do that.
Yeah, and it's a bit of empathy from her part as well. For Riley, does he see this opportunity of going to this concert together as maybe we can rekindle things? Maybe this is my chance to get back with Ellie?
I think Ellie saw it as a purely platonic interaction. But for Riley, I do think that he was reading into this, that not only did it mean more that she agreed to still go, but that he might even be able to use this as an opportunity to lure her back and kind of encourage her to come back to him in some way.
But if Riley thought this was his opportunity to win Ellie back, he was sorely mistaken.
Ellie's making it quite clear that she's not interested in Riley anymore. And what was apparent from the evidence is that Riley pressurises Ellie to go to that gig. She does it for the sake of playing along, being nice, end of their relationship. They go back to the room where Riley thinks they're going to make it up to get back together as a partnership. However, a key point as they're going into the bedroom, Riley discovers that Ellie's got messages from another chap on her phone, and she's actually really keen on him, and she wants to start a proper relationship with this other man. And the evidence suggests this is a trigger point, and then he loses complete control.
An examination of Ellie shows that she was subjected to a sustained and deliberate attack in which Riley tried to strangle the life out of her. For Riley to put his hands around Ellie's neck, someone he supposedly loved, is a real direct, determined, angry thing to do.
And it's personal. So the whole time, you're looking into the face of that person you love, whatever strange version of love he had or has, you're looking into their face. And it would have taken seconds and more seconds, possibly over minutes, for that level of pressure on that person's neck. And then we know a bag was found nearby. Now, whether the bag was part of that or suffocation.
What?
But when he's asked about it, he says he couldn't bear to look at her face. He put the bag over her head. But that's having just strangled her face to face.
Well, he strangled it until she's gone unconscious, because he said, I've just killed Ellie. So he thinks she's dead. There's a lot of time that has passed by where he could have stopped. That's my point. People say, oh, he just snapped. That's not just like punching someone.
No.
He's looked at her and strangled her until he believed he'd killed her. Would Riley have ever been involved in turning up as a police officer to domestic abuse and being on the other side of the table to what he's just done to Ellie?
Definitely, definitely. As a first-line officer, response officer, he's gone out to every type of crime, met vulnerable victims, been part of domestic abuse arguments and seen what's happening there, domestic homicides potentially. Yes, he would have seen it all, but he didn't then transpose that onto himself, his own situation. I think he separated himself and thought he was, you know, his home life and how he behaved was different to what he'd seen and dealt with.
So we don't look at Riley here as somebody who has planned an attack on Ellie. He actually is quite obsessed with her, and he wants to be with her. And when he realises that's not going to be the case, he's just snapped.
Exactly. There's no suggestion or evidence to say this was planned or premeditated. He's had high hopes. This meeting at the arena was going to be their get-together, their reconciliation. They have a house together. He thinks a future, and she's saying no. And these are the messages I've got with another chap. I want to go in a different direction.
Rejection is never easy to cope with. But what's shocking in this instance is how Riley, a trained police officer, responds with such brutal violence towards someone he claimed to love.
All of those built-up feelings that I think he's had for a really, really long time, the hope, the desire, encouraging her to stay with him, when he realises that that's just not going to happen, I think this is when he basically snaps at this point, and you just see that rage and the anger of not getting what he wants come to the surface.
Say Riley lost his head for a minute and just reacted in a horrible way. Then when he realises what he's done, it's what he does next, Why didn't he just call the police or an ambulance and go, oh, what have I done, you know? But instead he calls his family.
You would hope that something would happen in his psyche, in his mindset, that would say the right thing to do is to call an ambulance, to call the police. And yet he does think he's killed somebody. And what he does instead is he wastes crucial time. So Ellie suffered incredible injuries after that. Not only was it a really traumatic event, but she was physically hurt in a really, really significant way. So those 10 minutes made a really, really big difference to her health going forward.
Not only did Riley delay medical help for Ellie, but this grown man, a police officer, actually called his mum rather than the emergency services. What on earth was he thinking?
I think this is, for me, quite typical of what we see with some offenders who want to very quickly put themselves in victim state. So on face value, it looks very innocent. It looks like he's just called his parents. But what he was telling them was, I'm going to kill myself. So suddenly the focus is off of what he's done to someone else and he's shifting the focus onto him. He's now victim. Poor me, I'm really distressed, look at what I've done, this is what I'm going to do to myself. And that in itself is another way of deflecting from the real situation and really taking the emotional centre stage and kind of changing the dynamic of what we should be focused on, which at that point should have been Ellie.
This is someone who's professionally trained to remain calm, to diffuse situations. But in his personal life, he's doing the exact opposite. Surely, being a police officer, his job is to be able to control his emotions, right?
It looks like a switch has gone off because there's no evidence prior of him being outwardly violent or aggressive. But clearly, anger was there. Anger was able to come to the surface. And as someone who's a police officer, this is something that you would hope that they would have more control over. This is completely the opposite with this case.
So not planned at all. He's just, in that moment, thought, I'm going to kill her. And he tried to kill her, right?
In my opinion, he did try to kill her.
Believing he was now a murderer, Riley desperately tried to outrun his fellow officers in his bid to get to his mum and dad's house in Bradford.
Because Riley is a police officer and he knows the area really well, so he's got his local intelligence up to date. He knows the best routes out of the city. He knows where he can get money. He knows where he can get help. He knows where CCTV is because of all the investigations he would have done. He's got a head start. He's got a head start on the investigation team. But that knowledge as a police officer and his training and everything he'd have done up to that point would help him.
Is he using any of his police knowledge in trying to get away? Is there any evidence of that?
He's drawing cash out at 2 separate ATMs, but either side of midnight, because he'd reached his maximum limit on his account.
Right.
So that's why we've got him at 2 separate locations the other side of midnight.
So he's drawn out as much as he can get. So he is thinking of going on the run then, obviously.
Yes, he's getting rid of his phone and he's changing his mode of transport all the time to keep on the move. So he's trying to lose the trail behind him. He's thinking now and he's planning. He's kicked into, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of the way of being arrested?
When he's left that room, he's left in a hurry because he's panicked, left his warrant card there. But now as time's settled, he's turned into, right, what, his police brain's kicked in. And he's starting to think, I know what they're going to be looking for, and this is how they can't trace my steps. Riley's panic at the hotel has now shifted to cold, calculated thinking. His police instincts kicked in. He knew exactly how to try and avoid capture. But soon, the full story would unravel in court. At 4 a.m. on the 11th of November 2022, PC James Riley was arrested for the attempted murder of his ex-girlfriend Ellie Moxham. A manhunt across 3 counties ended up at his parents' home in Bradford after his own mother called the police. You can only imagine what it was like for his parents. A, getting that phone call, I've just killed Ellie and I'm going to kill myself. And then B, he rocks up early hours of the morning and he turns up at their house. That must have been like for them.
His parents would have been in a very difficult position. Irrespective of the crimes that Riley has committed, it's still their boy. So they have a sense of allegiance to him. But at the same time, they did the right thing, because as soon as he turned up at their address, the father locked the front door so he couldn't go out, and called the police.
I imagine it was very challenging for them to know what to do in terms of this is their son who's done something absolutely horrific. And also just trying to gauge what happened. Is it the truth? What's really happened? Have you really done that? So they must have been really struggling to kind of process and make sense of the things that he was telling them. The only thing that really made sense that they did was they did call the police themselves, which was absolutely the right thing to do. And in doing so, the police came to the house while Riley then escaped out of a bathroom window, which again shows how desperate he was just to evade that detection and evade being questioned by police for what he'd done.
After Riley's arrest, police wasted no time questioning him at the station about the brutal attack on Ellie Moxham the previous evening.
Riley would have been well aware of the severity of what he was doing. You're not going to strangle someone for 2 minutes and not appreciate that you're going to cause significant brain damage to that individual. But he was only prepared to say that he was angry and that he strangled her, but he didn't intend to kill her. So it was then going to be for the investigators, along with the CPS ultimately, to decide whether or not they felt that there was sufficient evidence, based on the medical evidence that would be provided, as to whether or not it was worthy of them to actually charge him with attempted murder.
With Riley in custody, the investigation passes all the collated evidence to the CPS. On the 24th of April 2023, James Riley is brought before a judge at Manchester Crown Court. After Riley's been arrested, what happens when it goes to court?
Well, it's not as straightforward as you'd think. He didn't plead guilty straight away. The prosecution had built a really strong case. They had a confession to his parents, but unfortunately, Ellie herself didn't really remember the attack.
What evidence did they actually have on Riley?
Well, they had the CCTV, and really importantly, they had that phone call to his parents.
And the warrant card as well left at the scene?
That's right, yeah, he'd left his card there.
Do you think he believes he's not going to get away with this then because he didn't plead guilty?
He drags it out. He really drags it out. First of all, he was charged with GBH, but once they'd seen the extent of Ellie's injuries and all the evidence, that charge was upgraded to attempted murder. It's a rare charge. It can be quite hard to prove, so I think he's dragged it out and out and out.
Do you think it made any difference, the fact he was a police officer?
He's got knowledge, hasn't he? He understands how the system works. He would be aware of just what he's up against. Ultimately, though, I think that him dragging that out, I think that was a final act of control over Ellie.
Really?
Yeah, you see it all the time. She's got to get ready for the trial then, and she's got all the stress and all the worry of thinking she's going to have to face him in court while she doesn't really remember what's happened to her.
Is he thinking as a police officer, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So I'm not going to give you anything. You have to prove that I've done this.
That sounds fair, and that's what I say about that attempted murder charge is it can be very difficult to prove, so he's not coughed to anything.
But even with his police knowledge, this was the end of the line for PC James Riley.
Right just before the trial is about to be heard, he decides then and then, OK, I'll plead. The evidence is so strong against me, I'll plead.
What does he plead?
And he goes for guilty, and that's when he gets convicted.
On the 12th of January 2024, James Riley was sentenced to 16 years for the attempted murder of Ellie Moxham. Was there any comments the judge made?
Yeah, the judge said that Riley was consumed with uncontrollable anger and that he said he had murderous intent.
Riley was a cop no more. He was a criminal. His actions betrayed the core values that a police officer should hold.
One of the things that a lot of times when police officers get arrested and convicted of crimes, there's always this debate about the public losing trust. I think in this set of circumstances, I'm not necessarily sure that Ellie may have a distrust of police, because the work that they did from the moment they realized that she had been attacked to the moment that Riley gets arrested some 4.5 hours later, I'd like to think that she would be complimentary in terms of how the investigation was conducted by the police officers. The relationship that she had with Riley was a completely separate matter. She will hate him for the rest of her life, and so she should. But I don't necessarily think that she would want to feel that police officers shouldn't be trusted.
As for Ellie, she had survived Riley's brutal attack. but it has left a deep and lasting mark.
Ellie has been explicit in how she's felt since the event and has said that she has felt incredibly stressed, that she now suffers with anxiety, night terrors, sleep disorders, that she has trust issues and is having to navigate future relationships because of what's happened to her. This is a significant psychological impact on someone that doesn't just impact them at the moment of the offence or the immediate aftermath, but for the rest of her life.
Was there ever any remorse from Riley?
Well, Riley has shown to be remorseful. He says he's incredibly sorry for what he's done, and he's agreed to never contact Ellie again, which was one of the conditions of his conviction. However, we also know that he's still holding a little bit of that possession and control. So they did actually own a house together, and they owned a joint mortgage, and from what we know, he refuses to relinquish that mortgage so she can sell the property, which shows that he's just holding on to those little threads of control that he may still have behind those bars.
He just can't let go completely, can he?
No.
James Riley's behaviour paints a disturbing picture and raises serious questions about how someone like him could have passed police vetting in the first place. Looking at Riley and how you've described him, controlling, coercive behaviour, surely them kind of traits means you shouldn't be a police officer.
Exactly, those traits mean they shouldn't be police officers, but there's no test that we do psychological testing in terms of looking for those behaviours. There's nothing in the vetting checks or any sort of misconduct files or anything around loss of control, any sort of behaviour issues, any sort of domineering traits or anything like that. So he'd have quite easily got through a vetting process and carried on his career.
Do you think then that is what attracted him to be a police officer? Because you get to have all that power, and narcissists and control freaks are addicted to power.
It may well be the ability to take away someone's liberty, the uniform, the warrant card, the cuffs, everything that comes with being a police officer, the power. Yes, that may have attracted him. His personality traits may have fell perfectly into that type of a police officer role, definitely.
Riley lost control, and he lost it so badly, he strangled the woman he loved, almost killed her. And even then, he didn't do the right thing and phone an ambulance. He went on the run. This man wasn't fit to be a cop. He didn't deserve to wear the uniform. At least now he's where he belongs, behind bars.